Welcome to Midlife Women Entrepreneurs. I am your host, Lynette Turner, and today I have a guest all the way from Costa Rica. We'll get to that later. But today we are going to talk about one simple problem, and that is how do you rebuild a simple, profitable business when you're done pouring from an empty cup? We've all felt it before. We're putting our heart and soul into our business, but we're not making any money, or we're not getting anything back. So my guest today is Molly Rolland, founder of HeartCast Media. She has built a multimedia company for the last 25 years. She's got a great story about leaving things behind and focusing on the stuff that she loves. She uses podcasting as a real business development tool. Molly, welcome. Give us an introduction and we're going to take it from there.
It's nice to be here. I really enjoyed our conversation last week, so I've been looking forward to being here today. I've owned a multimedia company for almost 27 years now. So I have been through the trenches and back again and have tons of experience, mostly from making lots of mistakes. So I'm excited to share those.
Well, yes, exactly. And you know what? That's so heartfelt because often we always see the story of somebody and they look so successful, but it didn't come without the blood, sweat, and tears. And sometimes, and you referenced our conversation last week for everybody that's listening. That was our pre-call. I always jump on a pre-call because I try to run these podcasts very sort of authentic. And so I like to get to know my guest a little bit beforehand. Molly, when you and I were chatting, you talked about, holy cow, what was I getting from this business that you were running? It's based out of LA at the time. Talk a little bit about that story and how you did the flip.
Yeah, absolutely. It was one of those things that from the outside looking in, it looked wildly successful, right? But it wasn't. It was a boulder that I was pushing up a giant cliff. And the second I stopped, it was going to roll back on me. But from the outside looking in, it looked great. I had 18 employees. I was managing 160 artists. I had a 3-story building across the street from the legendary Howard Theater in Washington, D.C. I was doing a lot, but it wasn't sustainable. And I wasn't happy. And I started the business because I'm a connector. And when I get excited about things, I want to share that with other people too. And so it's very natural. And I grew up in a very musical household. I grew up with the chieftains in my living room and playing musical instruments and Irish dancing at the White House, a real entertainment kind of a thing. And I love that. But I just hit a point where I always made sure nobody was hungry, but nobody ever asked me if I had eaten. It wasn't just pouring from an empty cup. There was nothing left. And I had a medical situation and they thought had cancer and I was going to die. And I was relieved. I was relieved to get off the ride. And when they told me I didn't have cancer, I was disappointed. And that's when I realized, okay, there's something really wrong here. You shouldn't be relieved to find out that you've pulled your exit ticket. That's not it. And so I closed the company. Everybody was very shocked about this, but I closed the company. And I always say that I Marie Kondoed and reverse Oprah'd my life. I sat down and I thought, what do I like about what I do? Right. Because I'm still doing the same thing. I'm doing it for different people. That's all. Right. I didn't give up. I didn't pivot. I adapted based on my personal growth. And so I thought about what am I enjoying about the work that I do? And then how to isolate that. What do I not enjoy? How do I get rid of that? And then I also realized that in my attempts to help so many people, I was enabling them to not be their best self at my own expense. And so when I say a reverse Oprah, and I literally was like, you got to go and you got to go. And I'm not responsible for anybody. And there's nothing under your seat. Go home. You know what I mean? I'm not the one anymore. I can't do it. And that was so freeing because it was the first time that I actually thought about what I want and not what the artist needed or what the city needed or what the nonprofits needed or what the kids needed, but what I needed. Because I would do these huge events and go to leave and I wouldn't have enough to take an Uber home, while everybody
Yeah.
thinks I'm cashing checks that don't
Yeah.
exist.
Yeah. And I just loved that part of the story. Like when you were telling me that last week, I was like, oh my God, that's so true. Because, we can get caught up in the sort of Instagram world, the social media world where everybody looks like they're all making, bank kind of thing. Okay. So I love the analogy you used as well, like reverse Oprah, Marie Kondo. What's her name again?
Condo.
Yeah, Marie Kondo, so talk a little bit about that process because It's not an easy thing to do. Like I kind of feel like you were brought to me by the universe a little bit because I think about my podcast. I'll be vulnerable here right now. And I think, you know what? I love doing my podcast and I don't have a problem finding guests at all, can be a problem for a lot of people. But yeah, I'm not making any money. And people will ask me, are you making any money? My parents ask me, no, I'm just doing it for the love of doing the podcast. And I think if I wanted to make money off of this podcast, I've got to get a much stronger business model, monetization strategy around it. But then I'm like, do I really want that? And do I love it enough to then say, okay, now I've got to do this, this, and this to start monetizing it? So I'm curious, like, how did you look at that business and say, okay, yeah, no, I hate everything or I like only pieces of it? What was the more detailed process?
Well, I think it's like getting really clear on what it is that you want to do, especially right now in this time. The world is falling apart. People are, I mean, it's just if you don't align with what you do every day, you're going to be miserable. If you're going into an office space where like you don't like those people or you don't feel like you can use your voice, that is going to kill your soul. It's going to chip away at your very being, especially as a woman, right? Especially as we're being suppressed and silenced and everything else. So you have to be really clear on what it is that you want to do and what you want to spend your time on. That is number one. Once you're clear on that, then it's like, okay, how do you identify the demand? And I think a lot of times as women, we're taught like follow your instincts, follow your heart, do something, follow your passion. It's bullshit. Passion doesn't pay the bills. Okay. It's not real. Listen, I love what I do. Okay. But if I could get paid being on a boat, half drunk all day, I would much rather do that. Okay. As much as I love my clients, and I love my work, I love my employee, I really do. I'm very, very fortunate to enjoy what it is I do. But it's not like I wake up every day and I'm like, I want to work 15 hours at my desk today. That's going to make my heart sing. It doesn't. What makes my heart sing is like creating a business that's sustainable, fixing all the mistakes I made before, being able to give my employees all 2 weeks pay for Christmas and a week off. That's what makes my heart sing, right? Having time to be able to come to the beach and hang out with my girlfriends last night, a bunch of women older than me. That makes and then what do I do? Well, I'm providing a service that a lot of people need. And I think it's like, you have to identify what it is you want to do all day and how you want to spend your time, and what you'd like to do for other people. And then who needs that? And is that real? Like, if you're like, I want to have a pretzel truck, well, you might be out of luck, my dude. You know what I mean? Is the demand for pretzels that high, or is this just your dream because you're setting yourself up for failure? So I think right now, especially, right? A year ago, 2 years ago, it wouldn't have been as important to align with your belief system as it was. It really matters now because you don't want to be surrounded by the wrong people, but there's still a demand for everything. So maybe your life coaching business won't be the same because it's like second homes. That's the first thing people stop paying for when their mortgage is tight. They're not paying for coaching anymore unless the job is paying for it. But there are people who are leaving marriages. There are, you know what I mean? Leaving career. You could adjust what it is you do and who you do it for without leaving the core of what it is that brings you joy. And I think that's really important, especially now, because as many industries as are crumbling, new ones are coming up, right? New
Yeah.
industries are forming. It's like the pandemic, right? Like, yeah, a lot of people went under, but a lot of people became millionaires because they were selling masks or whatever. So, not to be an opportunist, but be realistic about the world. And like, this isn't a good time to have a life coaching business. It's not. It just
Yeah.
isn't. Life coaching feels so frivolous right now. Tell me how to get out of my abusive marriage coaching. That is way more pertinent, right? Figure out what is happening right now and how you can fill that gap. Because what happens is when you're doing something purposeful and with intention and that aligns with your spirit, whatever that may be, then things will be more successful for you. But if you're focused on what it is that you want to do and not necessarily what is needed, you're gonna fail. And a lot of coaches will encourage you to do that.
Yeah. I love what you just said there about, well, the vein of what you were saying. I'm going to paraphrase it back. Take every little element and ask yourself, what will people pay for? And that's really interesting because I think sometimes we can look holistically at our offers versus pinpointing exactly. And maybe that one little pinpoint becomes a big, huge bubble in your business, but you didn't see it because you were so focused on the overarching holistic view. Is that kind of what you were?
100%. And what you think you were gonna do, like, when I first started for HeartCast Media, we had been doing a bunch of live streaming. It was, like, 2016, and we did all this live streaming, so and with my old company. So when I formed HeartCast Media in 2018, I said, "Everybody's gonna wanna live stream." Well, I was ahead of my time. Nobody was home until the pandemic, and then everybody wanted to live stream. I was like, "Where were you 4 years ago?" Right? So if you look at my original business plan, it has a lot about live streaming for businesses. I think 2 people hired us to do that, right? Things adjust and change. Don't be so staunch on what it is you thought it was going to be because the world is changing, right? There's probably more positions for community organizing and activating and things like that than there were 2 years ago or a year ago. Like everything is changing, the markets are changing, right? So understanding that and finding where you can fit in because women don't make any ground when we don't make money. You're not serving anybody by, getting kicked in the shins over and there's nothing honorable about saying, "I don't need to get paid." There's nothing honorable about devaluing yourself or your work. There's nothing good comes for anybody anywhere, especially women when we devalue ourselves. So figure out what it is that you're good at and what people will pay you for and lean in on that.
Yeah, based on the current market conditions, right? And that's kind of just reminds me of investing, right? You're going to invest in things, your portfolio into things that, you know, that the market is telling you to do, like during the pandemic, right? We saw Lululemon stock go through the roof because nobody was sitting in their
Yeah.
in their suits and ties anymore. They were sitting in their Lululemons. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I know that for a fact. I think the stock price was 110 and it went up to 385 or something like that. And I think that's how I'm hearing you. What you're saying is people might pay for everything in your offer, but at a particular moment in time based on what's happening to them and to within the market a little bit. So, okay.
Absolutely. And, a good example is like with our company, we do podcast production and booking and growth. And, we're doing a lot more podcast booking right now than podcast production because that's what people are interested in. That's what people
Yeah.
are Googling for. And we show up for it. And then so I've hired 3 new full-time people last year for that department alone. I'm not out here banging the drum trying to find more production clients. I'm like, okay, cool. Let's double down on booking. Let's be better than everybody else. Let me hire 2 new people this year to do this job with the person already doing it instead of being so dead set on, oh, I really want to do production. It just go where the market takes you and have your eyes open. The other thing is like reverse engineering, right? So, like in regards to your podcast, right? Like I always say to people when we're producing podcasts, what is the goal? Like, let's start from the end success. What does that look like? And then reverse engineer it. So, like in your case, I would say, well, let's look at your analytics. Let's look at your data. Who is your audience right now, right? How many downloads are you getting? What is the drop off point? Where are those people located? As much information as we can get demographics, job titles, income, gender, look at all of that stuff. And then I would create a profile and I would say, okay, well, this, your average listener is a 45-year-old woman, you know what I mean? Whatever, right? And then I would say, okay, who else is trying to talk to those people that you don't hate? Right? Whose brand would you not mind having represented on yours? Who is trying to get to those same people? That has a ton of value. Your direct voice to your audience has so much more value than Facebook ads or Google ads. Those are such a wide net. This is a personal recommendation. And if you really like that product, then you wouldn't have any problem saying sponsored by X product. I love X product. I've been using it for years. I'm not faking the funk. It's on my desk. You feel very good about saying it. And then your listeners will like that too, right? So that's one angle. The other angle is what is your main business? Why don't you shift who you're interviewing shift to the people that you would like to do business with? And you don't sell them anything. You just interview them and you build a relationship with them and you nurture that. And then the gift of reciprocity is real. So when you follow up and you say, hey, thanks for coming on the show, Molly, would you mind making that introduction? Would you mind joining my board of directors? Could I get 20 minutes of your time? I'm going to say sure, because I appreciate that. Like we had a great conversation. You made time for me. You included me on your platform, which is big and has a lot of, I'm going to say sure. Then you can start to build relationships, and those relationships go a long way, right? Then people are asking, what do you do? Like, tell me more about what you do, right? It changes everything. But you got to nurture those. And I think we live in a time where it's like more, 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 just the next one, the next. Slow down, man. If you did 22 interviews in a year, but you nurtured every one of those relationships and followed up with them and sent them the things and tagged them on LinkedIn and asked them for something, you are going to make money. But you have to make sure that you're interviewing people that are relative to the thing that it is that you do. And so
Right.
monetizing a podcast isn't always about downloads. Sometimes I think I was telling you, I did, 18 or 20 episodes and put 60K in my pipeline from 22 episodes, but it was very strategic and intentional. And the whole podcast has 500 downloads on 60 some odd episodes. It is not a winning podcast by any stretch of the imagination. But what I did was form 22 solid new relationships, not just with CMOs, but fractional CMOs who have multiple clients who see the value in the work that we do. So that's a way to monetize. So, it's always about like having a strategy. And a lot of times people will come to me and they say, we want to start a podcast, but what do people want to hear about? Don't worry about what people want to hear about. What do you want to talk about? Because I don't want to hear you talk about something that you're not passionate about. You can, just like how you can tell when someone's reading something and your brain just shuts off. You can't fake the funk on these things if you want people to actually listen and care, So if you're trying to build your audience, that's a different angle. If you're trying to fill your pipeline, that's a different angle, right? But no matter which one of those you take, you still got to be interested in what it is that you're talking about, or it's never going to be good, period. Even if it's just a pipeline filler, right? Like those episodes we did were pretty funny and pretty good if you're into marketing, but that's not like an award-winning podcast. My new podcast has 1,000 downloads in 4 months, right? The other one, 80 some odd episodes, 60 some odd episodes, 500 downloads, right? Well, the difference is passion, right? I'm a lot more passionate about this other podcast than I am. So, but I can also monetize that. I can do the same thing. I can take my data, I can run a report, pull the customer profile, and I could go to a number of different organizations, companies, brands, and say, listen, I got menopausal women over 50 who are ready to ride at dawn. What you got for me? And I guarantee you there's a bunch of brands who would love to get in front of an extra 12,000 people a week, you know?
Yeah, no, that's
So
really good.
just treat everything more like a business, because the better and the tighter your business is and the better your ability to make money, the more time frees up in the rest of your life to actually live it and spend time with your children or your husband or your girlfriends or go to the beach or whatever. And that's what really matters.
Yeah.
We got to make more money. Like women have to make more money.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. So on that note then, so let's talk about just generically. I know you gave a really good scenario using my podcast and what I could do, but let's say we've got a woman who is in very similar situation, but just a different situation with her business or different type of business. What does she do this week? Like how does she get started?
Go to the woods and eat some mushrooms. Step one. I'm
Yeah.
just kidding. Only kind of. You know, defragment your hard drive, right? Take some space, turn everything off, put your phone in another room, and make a pro and con list. What do you like? What do you not like about what it is that you're doing? Is it the people? Is it really dial in on what you don't like and put that to the side. And then what it is that you do like. And then how do you create a better business from that? And some people might be waking up and going, I don't like any of it. I don't like my
Yeah.
boss. I don't like the people I work with. I don't even like my customers, which happens when you're not in control. I actually like this weekend, I took a huge hit, did a bunch of work for somebody, and I was on the 5th revision and I was like, I don't do design by committee. This isn't a good fit. I lost a lot of time and money on that deal and I walked away because I really like her, but her self-limiting beliefs are not my problem. And I'm not doing a 5th version of the thing that you know what I mean? I'm not doing that because you showed your 18-year-old daughter and she didn't like it. I'm not, and she's a lovely woman. I would hang out with her, but I can't work with her because that's super insulting and an insane waste of my time. You know what I mean? Like I don't care what an 18-year-old who's never been in the workplace thinks. I have zero interest in that, right? So it's really important that you align with your clients and the people that you want to work with. And so, disseminating all that down into what do you like, what's working, and look at your business. Maybe none of it's working. Maybe you don't want to do that at all. Maybe you thought you wanted to be a boss, but you don't actually like it. Or What are the elements that you like versus the ones that you don't? I think that is the most important thing that you can do. And then the second step is go educate yourself. Like, as women, this information is not given to us. We are not taught how to be leaders. We are not taught how to make money. In fact, a lot of us feel ooky about talking about money, right? I was listening to something yesterday and they said, everybody says don't talk about money, but rich people talk about money all the time. That's all they talk about, right? And the rest of us are sitting around going, we don't talk about that. I do. I talk about money because I want women to make more of it, right? So I think getting a really good handle on that is important, not being afraid to want to be successful. And so educate yourself, because every successful person on the planet right now wrote a book in the last 5 years, and they will tell you exactly how they did it. And so when I first formed HeartCast Media, I had a business partner and she had a PMP and the business certification and the whatever, right? And I had the IP, the relationships, and the experience. Well, she lasted 6 weeks and she bailed. And I was in a studio in the Washington Post building with a lot of overhead. I was picking up clients. I had just spent 15 grand on more equipment, and she bailed. And I was like, I didn't want to do this alone. I thought I was going to have a partner. And so I was like, well, I better educate myself. And so for 3 years, I wrote or read 130 books on business development and a little bit of leadership. No, personal development. I'm not going to sit around and think about how bad I am. I do enough of that. I'm a woman. Okay. I was born to do that. I don't need books to tell me how flawed I am. I want books to teach me how to make money. And so that's what I would do. Dial in on what it is that you want to do, turn everything else off, and go read 15 books in the next, or 10 books. You could read a book a day if you really want to. How long is your commute? How many hours do you spend a day in the car? You crank that Audible up to 1.3, and on a simple road trip and back, you can listen into an entire book. And there are wildly successful people out there that will tell you exactly how to make money. It is all there, but you have to go seek it, and then you have to implement it. It's not just going to come to you by osmosis. That's not how this works. And women are getting less seats at the table. Our voices are being suppressed. It's so much harder for us. So you can't just show up and get paid. You got to be aggressive. And sometimes people aren't going to like you, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I like all of that. So, and even, just following certain people, I mean, you can read the book, they've got, and like, so you said something interesting there where you said for everybody that's successful has written a book or read a book. What did you say
Written,
there? Written.
written. There
So,
are
yes.
so many books available, every industry.
Yeah. And that's interesting because there's been a few things that are showing up for me, advertising, sponsored ads or whatever. And there's this one guy that, I can forget his name. Maybe I do remember it, but I'm not going to say it. So he says, let's get your book written in 30 days. And then from that, then you'll be able to, create your product or whatever. What do you think of that?
I think it's bullshit.
Yeah.
I mean, there's this idea that once you have a book, and then you can get this, and then you can get, I don't know, at some point we're all just twerking for the algorithm. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, sure, having a book, but like 30 days, like, what is the book about? Like, you better have something to say, because just having a book isn't it. You can't just like, okay, I did all these things. So now where's, I took this course, I bought this URL, I got the LLC. Okay, where's my money?
Yeah.
That is not it. And like those people are just selling you something, man. They're just that's a sales product to convince you that you'll make more money because of them. The times when my business are the most profitable is when I am the least active publicly, right? Hate LinkedIn. I despise it to my very core. Every time I open LinkedIn, I get angry. I see something so incredibly inappropriate. Men just talking and existing in the world irritates me at this point. You know what I mean? I stay off of it. When I keep my head down, I'm closing deals left and right. I'm working on my SEO. I'm doing inbound calls. Then I open LinkedIn and I see all these people wax poeticking about the podcast industry and charting the course of the future of audio. People who've never touched an audio file in their life, grandstanding on LinkedIn. No problem, dude. I'm going to be over here making money. My clients don't find me on social media. They're not like winning video clips. It's all such a trap. Focus on what you want to do, get clear on your offer, and have good SEO. And make
Yeah.
sure the people who are looking for that service see you, and then they will contact you. Make sure you have a Calendly that makes it really easy. Make sure that your email me buttons work on your website. Like, boil this
Yeah.
down to much more
The
simple terms,
basics.
because you know who's on LinkedIn liking your stuff? Unemployed people.
Yeah.
Okay? I mean, really, look,
Yeah.
it's AI slop or unemployed people. Those are the biggest posts. And what does that do? What does thousands of comments do? You know what it does? It gets you death threats from men. It gets you spam. It gets you like fake, endorphin Russians, whatever, right? Does it get you, does your phone ring? Did you close any
Yeah.
deals? No, it is a trap. It is 100% a trap, right? It's a flawed illusion,
Yeah, to keep you in a
SEO.
spin, and that's exactly
Yeah.
I can't even go on LinkedIn anymore. It's just for me, I mean, I know we're kind of picking on that platform, but there's a lot of platforms where there's a
Yeah.
lot of mis there's a lot of deceiving information out there that the real true story behind it isn't the case, and I like that, keep your head down. So in all of that, where does podcasting fit as a business development? Your company, working with your company, or just podcasting in general?
Well, it's a lot of what we're doing right now. Like, what are you into? What makes you happy? What do you want to do with your time? Let's reverse engineer it into a business, and then we help you do it. We're like the elves behind the scene. We do all the hard work so you can just show up and be great. But it's really all boils down to how can you make money? And sometimes I tell people, I don't think you should have a podcast. I tell people all the time, I don't think you ever should podcast. Focus on making money. You know what I mean? Focus on
Mhm.
making this idea. And I always joke with people, and because you have a podcast, if you want to hide a secret, record it on a podcast and publish it for the world. No one will ever hear it.
Yeah.
Because seriously, it's like a
It's so
vault.
true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, it's like, honestly and truly, it is really hard to get people to listen to your podcast, and the only reason why my podcast has so many downloads right now is because I was detained by ICE last year in May or I was detained by ICE in May at the Miami airport, and I went viral, and that gave me a little boost, but if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have as many, you know what I mean? So, like, it's not a magic pill, starting a podcast. In fact, it's a lot like taking another course, writing a book nobody asked for that's not even that good that you wrote with AI. Enough. Enough. Nobody needs an AI written book, for the love of Christ. You know what I mean? Nobody. Don't fall for those traps. They're just like shiny objects that are going to keep you away. If you're really clear on who your ideal client is, then having a targeted season of podcast for 12 episodes, and you're looking at more like 12 leads that you're high caliber, high quality leads that you're generating, that is a great way to do it. But then you do 12 episodes, you fill your pipeline, and you put pause on the podcast, and you revisit it when you need to fill your pipeline again, which is very, very different than trying to get downloads and be known as a podcaster
Yeah,
and
no,
be
that's
posting
really
your
good.
clips and your graphics and you know what I mean? So it's just getting really, really clear on what it is that you want to do. And I love that stuff. I've always said I want to do like a speed dating for podcasting and just go table to table and be like, what's your business? And then I could be like,
Yeah.
okay, you could do, because I love the strategy of that. And sometimes I say people, you shouldn't. You shouldn't. Build your website better and focus on SEO and get some inbound traffic and inbound discovery calls and get better at selling, get more comfortable at selling, understand what your offers are, get really clear about them, who they're for, who they're not for. That's where you should be spending your time, not trying to think of like, what does the audience want to hear? That's unless you're just independently wealthy and you want to sit around and chit chat all day, which I'm here for that as well.
Yeah, exactly. So that's to start a podcast, but what do you think about guesting?
Guessing is fantastic. I'm a big fan of that. We sell it a little different. People always say, tap into other people's audience. And I'm like, no, man, this is speed dating for B2B. Don't worry about the audience. You're not tapping into anybody's audience. You don't have the voice of God, as they say in broadcasting, right? You're not going to just turn people into your raving fans because they heard you. No, what you're going to do is form a relationship. We have a relationship now, right? We chatted last week. We have similarities. You used to live in Mexico. We both white women, gringas in Latin America. We have a bond now. If something comes up that's going to benefit you, I'm going to, of course, pass it your way or include you in something or invite you to something. That's a relationship. Maybe one day we'll do business or I'll send you some, right? Podcast guesting. Form a relationship with the host and nurture it. Everything else comes organically, but it's also really important to pick good podcasts because there are a mountain of crappy podcasts that'll probably never even get published and can be an absolute waste of your time and misrepresent you. So
Yeah,
getting on good
100%.
podcasts matters. Hiring an agency helps because we cut through the noise, but being very clear on what is your messaging, right? If you Google me and look at all the podcasts, I'm saying the same thing over and over. Podcasting for business development. interview the people you want to do business with, get really clear on your offers, do your I say the same thing over and over again. You would hear 18 different versions of this, same thing, because that's what I want to talk about. And I give the same CTA, my website, heartcastmedia.com/friends, because we're friends now, right? And
Yeah.
that's the most important thing. Make it very, very clear. What is the message? The message is, I want to help you strategize. I want to help you make more money through podcasting and podcast booking. And if we get on a strategy call and I'm not the right fit, I'm still down to give you strategy and send you off with your head spinning and a notepad full of notes, ready to go tackle the thing that is right for you. Because I think that's what women should be doing for each other right now.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, you've already said where to find you and what you would offer, but let's just go before we wrap up. Let's say it one more time. How does somebody get a hold of you, and why would they want to get a hold of you rather than sitting there trying to keep struggling yourself?
Well, because it's always good to get a little feedback, and I'll be the one friend that tells you like it is, whether you want to hear it or not. But it's HeartCast Media .com/friends, right? Because we're all friends now. And you
Yeah.
can get you can get all my links and book a meeting and, see the stuff. It's just easier that way. But I would say, or check out my podcast. It's called What Do We Do Next? I will plug that because it matters and I'm very passionate about that one. But let's connect. I think that the more women connect together and find solace and community in each other, especially as business owners, right? I have a lot of friends, but they're not all business owners. So I value the strategy calls. I value my clients. I value the podcasts I get to go on because it's nice to talk shop with other women. It's nice to feel a little less alone and feel like a part of a community. And so I would say just lean in on that and surround yourself with the people that you wanna be around, you know?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. That's perfect. Molly, thank you for being such a straightforward, cut through the noise guest. You were awesome. I really appreciate your feedback. And thank you for using me as a bit of a use case. I didn't know we were going to do that, but I'm glad we did. All right. Well, enjoy your time down in Costa Rica. I think you said it was hot and muggy there today. So,
It is.
yeah, awesome.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Lynette. It's really, really great hanging out with you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Anytime. We'll talk soon.